Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah if you are new here. Today I'm going to be sharing with you more canning recipes. It is that time of year and I also got a new pressure canner, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how I use that. This video will have mostly pressure canning videos with pressure canning recipes with I think just one water bath canning in this one. I'm pretty sure. I am filming this after the fact. I've been canning for the last couple of weeks and I'm just compiled them into one video, so I don't exactly remember, but I'm pretty sure. As always, I will link recipes down in the description box. Down there you can also find timestamps for specific recipes and the canning process for those recipes if you are looking for something specific or if you'd like to come back and reference this at a later time. I will also link my previous canning video because in that one I did mostly water bath canning and I kind of explained the process and a couple like tips and tricks and what I do and all of that. So I will leave that below if you are interested in checking that out as well. And the pressure canning in this video is done with a pressure canner. I know some people have very strong feelings about using a pressure canner versus like stovetop pressure canning. I did my research and I feel like it is a safe option for my family. Obviously do your own research and make that determination for your family. But the recipes linked down below are actually have the instructions for stovetop pressure canning. So if that's the kind of pressure canner you have and you're just interested in the recipe that I'm sharing, you can look at those recipes for the exact instructions on how to do it that way. I'm not gonna stand here and chat all day. Let's go ahead and get into the video.
First, I want to start by saying I started filming these videos about 3 weeks ago, and I think I mentioned that somewhere else in this video as well, but I don't remember all of the specifics for these recipes, so the recipes will always be down in the description and there will be timestamps if you need to refer back to those. I know I just said that, but I just want to remind you that there are so many places to find that information, and I'm really sorry if I seem a little out of it. It's been a while since I did all of this. So first I'm making beef stew, and I just had to start with prepping the vegetables. I did put the potatoes in the water because it's the first thing that I chopped up, and then later I actually rinsed them and put them in fresh water too so that it could get kind of some of that starch off. So I did potatoes, carrots, celery, onion, garlic for this, and then meat, which I will get to in just a moment. But I pretty much just chopped everything up into bite-sized pieces. Everything goes into the can raw. I know with my last canning video I said, hey, my husband's around, I did all of this in 2 days, my kids are occupied, like I'm not having to be a mom. That was not true for this whole video that you're about to see. All of these recipes were canned when it was just me with my kids at home. So it is possible. You just have to break it up and do little chunks at a time. So I did, the prep work mostly, like if they're at the table coloring or if they're playing with Play-Doh or if they're running around. A lot of times they'll play at my feet or you might see them running around in the background. Like they're just being kids. And there's different cuts in the video. And a lot of those times those cuts are made because I had to stop for a second and help a child with whatever. They're young. They still need a lot of things. But here I am with the meat. I just used this steak. I think it was round steak. I don't know. We ordered like a quarter of a beef, so cow, from a farmer. And then we picked it up from the locker. I told them I didn't want any of the steak. I just wanted everything ground. And somehow we still ended up with steak. So I decided this would be a great way to use it. So again, you are putting everything in here raw, including the meat, because it will cook while it's being pressure canned. So I don't know how much I put in there, about half a can worth, and then the potatoes, and then the vegetables and the garlic, and just layering them all in there and kind of pushing them down because you want them packed pretty tightly. And I did everything that I had chopped except for a few of the onions and then the potatoes, which I actually ended up just eating later on. And then you're going to fill the jars with beef broth. You can make this however you want. The recipe suggested using beef bouillon powder or cubes, with water. I did the paste, and I would do less paste per water. Also, do not add the salt. Oh my gosh, please, if you're going to take any advice from me, do not add the salt on this. I seasoned the steak with Montreal steak seasoning, and then the saltiness of the beef bouillon paste. It was so salty is what my dad told me. He's the only one that's tried it, but I totally believe it. And then I'm going in and getting the bubbles out. In the slow motion on the one, you can kind of see like there's actually quite a few air bubbles that come out of this. It's really important that you do this step so that the air bubbles don't come out in the processing and you lose the liquid. Now for this canner, you can only fit 5 cans. I made the mistake of making 6, so I just saved those for later. In every single process, no matter what you're doing or the time you're doing it, you add in 8 cups of water. Again, this is for the electric canner, not for like the stovetop kind, so you'll have to figure that out on your own. But the green dial you saw on top, that's because my elevation is above 11,000 feet. Then you put it to exhaust, set the time, it'll start, and it had those lines. And then it's going to be steaming the whole time, and it'll count down from 10 minutes all the way down to 0. At that point, you want to turn that knob to airtight. Don't touch it with your hands because it spews steam the whole time and it is hot. Then it will start the timer countdown. It will give you 3 beeps when it's all done, and then you let it sit for 1 hour. Do not touch anything. And then after that 1 hour, you can open it up and take your items out and set them on the counter. Same with water bath canning. You want to let them sit 12 to 24 hours to completely cool down.
Do you recall when we were young, running from all things at once without thinking twice?
Then I'm going to move on to chili beans. This recipe had different options for soaking the beans. I just soaked them on the counter for like 4-ish hours. And then put them in water on the stove to boil and simmer for a while I got everything else ready. So I'm chopping up the tomatoes. I'm just kind of dicing them in bite-sized pieces. And to cut tomatoes, my uncle taught me way back when I was in high school, thank you, Randy, that using a serrated knife is the easiest way to cut tomatoes because they don't slide around under the normal blade of a knife. So there's your tip for the day. But then also in this, I added green pepper. I only did half of a green pepper, and then some onion. Again, just dicing everything up to bite-sized pieces, about the same size pieces.
And I knew it would catch up and that we would be the ones left behind.
While that was happening, my beans were done, so I took them out, drained them, and rinsed them off. Back over to my pot on the stove, I'm going to add oil, and then the peppers, onions, and I also just minced up some garlic, and then adding in the ground beef to cook. The recipe linked is for double what I actually made. I halved the recipe, so I did 1.5 pounds of beef, and then it said to use like chili seasoning, and I didn't have any, so I just found a secondary recipe for chili seasoning. After this was all kind of cooking, I did taste it to see kind of where I felt, and I added a little more seasonings. And then I had some of these pepperoncini peppers in the fridge from a roast I had made, so I chopped those up and just threw them in there because why the heck not? Adding in the beans and adding in the tomatoes, and then there's also tomato sauce and tomato juice that goes in this as well.
The stories I've been told, they never seem to leave my mind. And this road that I am on,
bringing it to a boil and then letting it simmer. I think 30 minutes is what this one was for. And then you're going to fill up your jars. This one was also a pressure canning recipe because of the beef is mainly why you want to pressure can it. And everything that I pressure canned, that's not true. The beef stew and the chili that I pressure canned was for 75 minutes. I know that I showed 90 minutes before. I was actually incorrect on that, but it's okay for it to go longer. You just might lose some liquid due to siphoning if you go too long. The lids and the rings are the same for this pressure canner as it is for water bath, where you just put the rings on finger tight.
look out, here she comes.
And then I had one beef stew left to go in here with the chili. Pretty much this pressure canner just ran all day. I will say it was nice not having to stand at the stove, not having the open flame with my kids around, not being worried about the pressure dropping or anything like that. There is a constant stream of steam that comes out of this pressure canner as it's canning, and you want to be careful if you do have little ones around that they don't go anywhere near it. It's kind of loud too. It is definitely not quiet with that steam coming out. As always, I label everything, not necessarily for the contents because you can kind of see what's in there, but more so that I have a date on there. Home canned goods, typically you'll be told they're good for like 18 months. Sometimes like these soups, I think the recipe says 3 to 5 years. My personal opinion is that if it looks okay and smells okay, it is okay. But use your own discretion on that.
The woman that I love, it's too bad she'll never know.
And then moving on to some good old green beans. So this big old sack of green beans took me 27 minutes to snap the ends off and then just snap the beans and, into reasonable sized pieces. And I was just throwing them in the sink. I had scrubbed the sink out really well with hot soapy water and then filled it up with cold water with a little bit of vinegar in there. And then I had to put them in a strainer to drain all of that water out. And then also at this point, I was pulling any pieces out that were like hard or that I had missed that were just kind of gross. Put everything back in the sink, rinse them all really well so they didn't have that vinegar on there, and then getting them ready to go in the cans. Now, these are really simple. You just pack the green beans in the cans, and I did find that you can shove them in there pretty tight and it's going to be okay. And then I was boiling some water, and you just fill the can with boiling water. Now, this is another recipe where it did say to use salt. Oh, I forgot to mention, we haven't tried any of the chili yet, so I can't tell you how good or if that's good or not. I tried it before canning, but canning can change the taste a little bit. But anyway, back to the green beans. This recipe did say to use salt, so I did add salt. We had some of the little jars that didn't seal that we ended up eating, and 3 out of 4 people in my family thought that it was too salty. I would not add this much salt again. If any salt, the salt is definitely just for like personal taste preference, and I thought I was saving myself a step by then not having to salt the green beans after we open the jar and we're cooking it. But I hopefully didn't ruin them all. We haven't had one of the big jars yet, so hopefully those are a little bit better. Just know that I personally do not think the salt is necessary.
Yeah, I can't tell her how I feel because she has someone who makes her happy. I'm a ghost in these walls.
All right, these were a pressure can recipe as well, and this was on a completely different day than the soups. That's why I had to put the canner kind of all back together. 5 of them go in there. So that's kind of what I knew going into it. So I only filled up 5 to begin with. The 8 cups of water, like I said before, close it, make sure the nozzle is set to exhaust, lock the lid, plug it in, start it up.
Or at least I try to be.
And then while that was going, I did get green beans put into the jars for the second round, and then I just covered them with a towel until it was ready to go. And then when I pulled them out, I was a little worried because you see the liquid at the bottom there, but it all settled after it was done boiling and it had sat there. And then there were a couple of them that didn't have that liquid at the bottom, and that's how I knew I could pack them a little better next time.
Here are all of the green beans. I got quite a few. I did put labels on them. Obviously that's not necessary because you can see that it's green beans, but I wanted to make sure that I had a way to date them, and so I figured I'd just go ahead and put the whole thing on there. I did 3 batches in total, and I actually had some this size that didn't seal. And I don't know, like some of the lids, you can see this one still has a little bit of extra of the like rubbery goop stuff. I don't know if that was a problem with all of them or what, but I just put it in the fridge and we'll eat those tonight for dinner. But that's a good little stock of green beans there. And then since I'm down here, over here are the other things I've made this week. This is the chili, and then this is the beef stew. I already gave one to my dad. This is what that shelf is looking like so far. Happy with it. I think I'm going to do black beans next, but I'm going to do the soaking method, so I'll have to do that tonight.
And black beans, I did the soaking method, so I had to soak them the night before, and I got water all over my counter because not all of the water was out of the strainer, I guess. As after I did this, my husband came up to me and I had said something about the black beans, and he said, "Oh, it looked like a jar of spiders on the counter." Like, where would I acquire a jar of spiders? But you add some baking soda to that and water, and then just let it sit overnight. And then in the morning, you want to drain it and then rinse the beans really well. Put them into a stock pot and fill them with water. You want enough water that you'll be able to use the water to also help fill the jars. Any leftover liquid you can just discard. So you let those boil and then simmer for a while on the stovetop, and then pack them into your hot jars since it is a hot pack method. I got 3 really good filled jars, and then 1 jar that was, I would say, like 3/4 of the way with beans, and then the rest of the way with liquid. I wasn't going to waste them, and I didn't have any little jars left at this point, so I just made it work. Again, you want to make sure all of your bubbles are out, and this was a pressure can recipe.
I'm not showing how I feel for her, but she won't feel the same for me. I've got this picture in my mind. It's just the two of us, just the two of us.
This one, the cook time was different on. It was, nope, it was 75 minutes as well. Never mind. And then the last recipe I'm sharing is an enchilada sauce. This is actually a water bath recipe, and it's the only water bath that I had done like in these 3 weeks. This is the same recipe that I've used before, so I know that it's a good recipe. In my last canning video, somebody had asked me to share the recipe for that enchilada sauce, and I did leave that linked in the comment section. But then we actually ended up needing more enchilada sauce anyway. So if you were the one looking for that recipe, here is how you make it. So everything just needs a rough chop because you're eventually going to put everything in a blender and then through a strainer. So I used tomatoes, about 5 pounds of them, and some onion. I just had some onion already in the fridge that I roughly chopped, and then I added a whole other onion as well. Garlic, again, I just rough chopped it mostly so that it was like open and could add that flavor to the sauce, but you definitely don't need to get like your garlic press out and truly mince it or anything like that.
But I know I'll have to try to let her go, because she won't be mine. I listen when she talks, I watch her when she walks. She's giving me these feelings that I've never felt before. But she will never know that I love her so well. She's with somebody else, and I will have to let her.
And then this recipe also calls for dried chilies. The amount of seeds you leave in these chilies is going to be what determines your spice level. I removed as many seeds as I could. There were a few that got in there, and that's okay. I did forget to taste it before I actually canned it, but you just put your pot on the stovetop and turn the heat on. No liquid in the bottom right now. You're going to add your dried chilies, chili powder, and cumin, and just like heat that up. You don't want it to burn, but you do want it to toast. And then when it gets to the point where you think, oh, if I let this go 1 more minute, it's going to burn, that's when you add in your water. And then you're going to put in your garlic and your onions, and you're going to let that sit for like 10 minutes until those onions start to get soft. And that's when you add in the salt and sugar.
She will never know, never.
And then you add in all of those tomatoes, and you are going to let this sit. I don't remember how long it cooks for, but you basically just let it sit on the stove. Your house will smell very spicy. It's pretty pungent. So if you have anybody's like sensitive to smells, maybe don't do this with them in there. I did also have our exhaust fan on, but this is what it's going to look like when it's done. Everything's cooked down. Now you're going to put it into a blender or food processor. You want to break it down. Do a little bit at a time, and also be careful because it is a very hot liquid. Obviously, it was just boiling. And then because you want enchilada sauce to be very thin, not chunky, you need to strain it somehow. There is a tool or a device, and it looks kind of like a strainer on a handle, but it's in the shape of like a cylinder that comes to a point like a triangle, and I don't know exactly the name of it now that I'm trying to think of it, of course. But typically you would like pour it in there, and then it has this little handle thing that you like smush everything around the sides, and it goes much faster than this. I don't have that. So I just have this little baby mesh strainer. I poured it through. I used a rubber spatula and just pressed the mixture in there, and then the like stuff that wouldn't go through, every now and then I would pull that out and do it again. I don't know, I just worked on it. It took a lot of time and my wrist hurt really bad, but then you put it back on the stovetop just to heat it up again. My jars had been sitting in hot water, and you want to add a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. This is to make sure that the vinegar or the acid level of the enchilada sauce is high enough for it to be safe to Waterbath can. It does not change the flavor of the enchilada sauce. You cannot tell that it's there because the enchilada sauce already kind of has like a vinegary taste. So I promise you, it does not make it taste bad or make it just taste like vinegar. And then filling them up, wiping them off, and putting them into the Waterbath canner, bringing it to a boil. Once the boil starts, the process time was 40 minutes on these. And then pulling them out, and conveniently my black beans got done about the same time as my enchilada sauce, so that worked out really well.
It's like she stole my heart without knowing she did. But I guess that it will pass. Yeah, I can't be the only one who got lost inside the blue of those eyes.
That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. Don't forget to subscribe before you go. Again, if you like this video, go ahead and check out that last canning video that I did, which will be linked down below. I also still have plenty of canning that I am currently doing, and there will be more canning videos. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.
But I have to try as hard as I